Oh, front row seat to the greatest downfall ever staged. Picture this. An aging king stands at the edge of his reign, and reason. He demands love in the currency of words, splits a kingdom with his pride, and finds himself stripped bare. Not just of crown, but of clarity, family, and finally his very mind. This is not just tragedy. This is Shakespeare's most brutal dissection of the human condition. A play where thunder is not just weather, it's prophecy. Where betrayal is sharper than any dagger. Where madness doesn't descend, it rises from within. Welcome to Guide to Reads, where books don't just tell stories, they hold mirrors. Today, we step out onto the wind-swept heath with King Lear, a tale that demands we ask, how much must a man lose before he truly sees? So, what happens when you gather one crumbling patriarch, 3 vastly different daughters, a scheming illegitimate son, a loyal fool, a disguised nobleman, a storm that cracks the sky like judgment itself, and a moral universe teetering on collapse? You get King Lear, Shakespeare's most harrowing masterwork. A story that feels ancient and immediate, mythic and intimate, cosmic in scale yet excruciatingly personal. Set in a shadowy pre-Christian Britain, a land suspended between order and chaos, Lear begins with a question disguised as a ceremony. Which of you shall we say doth love us most? And from the moment those words are uttered, we begin our descent. What unfolds is a theater of ruin. Flattery is rewarded, truth is punished, loyalty is exiled, and nature itself recoils from man's arrogance. What begins as a royal division quickly becomes a cosmic unraveling, a meditation on aging, blindness, justice, and the terrifying price of unchecked pride. For over 4 centuries, King Lear has haunted readers and audiences alike. It speaks to anyone who has known the weight of power, the sting of betrayal, the ache of familial distance, or the madness that creeps in when the world no longer makes sense. If you've ever looked at the heavens and asked why, Lear has been there. So if your heart can bear the weight of poetic devastation, and if you believe literature should wound as well as awaken, stay with us. Because in this episode, we don't just revisit a play. We walk into the storm. We follow a king into his own undoing, and we listen closely as he discovers that the loss of everything might be the first real glimpse of truth. 1. Nothing comes of nothing. Imagine a king, long wrapped in robes of power, now aging, while afraid of fading. He doesn't want to rule anymore. He wants to be loved, worshipped, honored, obeyed, without the weight of governance. So, King Lear hatches a plan dressed in vanity and draped in danger. He will divide his kingdom between his 3 daughters, but not by birthright, no, by performance. Whoever says she loves him most wins the largest share, a public love test disguised as royal duty. But beneath it, a desperate plea. Tell me I matter, even as I fade. Goneril, the eldest, steps up first, a master of performance. Sir, I love you more than word can wield the matter, she begins, her voice soaked in poetic excess. Regan follows, competing not in sincerity, but in volume. She loves him so much, all other joys are her enemies. It's theatrical, it's hollow, it's exactly what Lear wants to hear. Then comes Cordelia, youngest, most loved, and now most dangerous because she refuses to flatter. I cannot heave my heart into my mouth, she says. She offers love, not as currency, not as spectacle, but as bond, measured, real, uninflated. Nothing, she says when pressed for more. Lear stares into the silence. Nothing will come of nothing, he warns. He wanted words. She gave him truth. And in this kingdom, that's treason. In a fit of wounded pride, Lear disowns her, erases her from his will, and when Kent, his loyal advisor, dares to protest, "See better, Lear," he pleads. He too is cast out. "Come not between the dragon and his wrath," the king roars. But Lear is no dragon. He's a blind man in a burning house, casting out those who came to save him. Cordelia departs, not in disgrace, but with a quiet, noble dignity. Stripped of dowry, she is still chosen as queen by the King of France, who sees in her what her father could not, integrity. And so the court is left in the hands of Goneril and Regan, who share their father's hunger for power, but none of his need for love. Only one voice dares challenge this madness, the fool. He mocks Lear with riddles, cuts him with truth, and says what no courtier dares. Thou shouldst not have been old, till thou hadst been wise. He is both jester and prophet, a crownless truth-teller in a hall full of liars. Elsewhere, another father stands at a crossroads, Gloucester, loyal to Lear, but blind in his own house. He has two sons, Edgar, legitimate and noble, and Edmund, born outside wedlock, bitter, sharp, ambitious. Edmund, twisted by exclusion, turns to deception. "Why, bastard?" he snarls. "Wherefore base?" And in his soliloquy, he pledges loyalty not to man or God, but to nature, red in tooth and claw. He forges a letter, a lie, a trap for Edgar, a poison for his father's heart. And Gloucester, too quick to doubt the true, too slow to question the false, starts down a path of ruin. Two fathers, two betrayals, two storms brewing, not in the sky but in the soul. The ones who spoke truth are gone, the ones who lied now rule, and both Lear and Gloucester, in their blindness, have already begun to fall. This is the lesson written in fire across King Lear's opening act. That flattery can crown a fool, that truth can exile the wise, and that when love is treated like theater, nothing is what you sow, and nothing is what you reap. 2. A man more sinned against than sinning. The man who once commanded nations now comes knocking at his daughter's doors, not for war, not for counsel, but for welcome. King Lear, stripped of rule but clinging to pride, arrives at Goneril's estate with pomp, fury, and 100 knights at his back. He expects reverence, he receives resistance. Goneril is cold, calculated, and curt. Her hospitality is riddled with insult. She complains of the disorder his men bring, and demands they be dismissed or diminished. Lear, struck by this unexpected cruelty, cries out, "How sharper than a serpent's tooth it is to have a thankless child." He storms out, heart bruised, pride still intact, clinging to the hope that Regan, his other daughter, will offer him the love he believes he deserves. But already the walls are closing in. Kent, once banished, now disguised as a lowly servant named Caius, returns to Lear's side. He plays the fool to serve the truth, offering loyalty even when it costs him his name. And Lear, though unaware of the ruse, feels something honest in the man's voice. Even in disguise, loyalty speaks. Meanwhile, far from the palaces, another betrayal festers. Edmund, Gloucester's illegitimate son, sharpens his schemes. To the world he's injured by Edgar, the rightful heir. But the wound is a lie, a prop in a cruel performance. Gloucester believes the false and banishes the true. Edgar, cast out like Cordelia, vanishes into madness, or something resembling it. He becomes poor Tom, a half-naked, dirt-covered beggar possessed by imaginary fiends. His nobility traded for survival, his identity shattered to dust. Two heirs, Cordelia and Edgar, both banished, both silenced, while falsehood wears a crown and smiles. And Lear, oh Lear. He reaches Regan's gates, weary but still proud, but Regan has no mercy left. She and Goneril stand united now, not as daughters, but as tyrants cloaked in filial duty. They strip him of his retinue, first half, then all. They offer shelter, but only if he comes alone. Lear, desperate for dignity, begs, "Reason not the need." But they do. And then, with the cruelty of those who once pleaded for love, they turn him out, into the storm. Thunder roars, the heavens split, and an old king, no longer father, no longer ruler, yet stumbles out into a night that mirrors his mind. Chaotic, wrathful, howling. At his side, the fool, still speaking riddles, still bearing truth, still loving the man no one else will follow. With each flash of lightning, Lear's mask cracks further. His words blur rage and grief. "I am a man, more sinned against than sinning." He bellows at the sky as if it owes him justice. "Blow, winds, and crack your cheeks. Rage, blow." He threatens the cosmos with vengeance. "I will do such things, what they are, yet I know not. But they shall be the terrors of the earth." But the wind does not answer. And Lear, for all his shouting, cannot command the elements. What he can command no longer exists. And then, a quiet fracture. "This heart shall break into 100,000 flaws, or ere I'll weep." Not a king, not a father, just a man, lost in the wilderness, hunted by betrayal, haunted by love, and slowly going mad. This is the storm Shakespeare draws with terrifying precision, not just of thunder and rain, but of a man unraveling. The crown has fallen, the loyal wear disguises, and the only clarity left is that truth has been exiled, and the storm is only beginning. 3. Out, vile jelly. The skies begin to quiet. But Lear still carries the storm within. The wind no longer howls, but the thunder has moved inside his mind. He finds shelter in a hovel, ruined and roofless, as tattered as the soul he's trying to protect. Here, stripped of crown, stripped of name, he unravels. He crowns himself with weeds. He holds court with ghosts. He puts his daughters on imaginary trial, raging against the betrayal carved into his heart. But in the darkness beside him, there's another broken soul. Poor Tom, raving, barefoot, smeared in filth, haunted by demons with names like Obidicut and Flibbertigibbet. Lear stops. He stares. And in this ragged, trembling man, he sees something terrifying and true. Is man no more than this? It's a question that cuts through the madness like lightning through cloud, beneath every robe, every crown, every name. Is this what we are? A naked creature, trembling in the cold? But poor Tom is not who he seems. He's Edgar, still in hiding, still pretending, still surviving. And though Lear sees madness, Edgar sees revelation. The king, in falling, is finally seeing what he never looked at before. Meanwhile, Gloucester, another father, makes a choice. Still blind to Edmund's lies, he nevertheless sees something clearly. What is happening to Lear is wrong. And so, in secret, in silence, he chooses loyalty. He will help the king escape. It is a quiet act of courage, and one that costs him everything. Edmund betrays him. Gloucester is captured, dragged before Regan and her husband Cornwall, and punished with unthinkable cruelty. He is tied down, accused of treason, and then Cornwall leans in, smiling. "Out, vile jelly," he says as he gouges out Gloucester's eyes. But cruelty, like fire, eventually consumes its wielder. One of Cornwall's own servants, a man of lower rank but higher conscience, can bear no more. He draws his sword, wounds his master, and is killed by Regan on the spot. But the wound to Cornwall is fatal. One tyrant falls, even as others sharpen their knives. Goneril's husband Albany, until now a passive shadow, begins to stir. The brutality awakens something long dormant. He looks at his wife and sees not ambition, but evil. He begins to speak, to question, to resist. Even in a world collapsing into cruelty, conscience flickers to life. And Edmund? Edmund is rising. With Cornwall dead and Gloucester disgraced, he stands atop a pile of ruin. No longer merely the bastard, he is now the object of power and of desire. Both Goneril and Regan turn their eyes and ambitions toward him. Each plots in secret. Each wants him for herself. And Edmund? He plays along. He stokes the fire. He feeds on it. What began as a bid for recognition has become something colder, grander, darker. His loyalty is to himself alone. Now look closely. 3 men walk this wounded world. Lear, once king, now lost to reason. Gloucester, now blind, beginning to see. Edgar, disguised as mad, clinging to clarity. Each has been stripped of status, of safety, of self. But in the ruins, they begin to grasp truths too large for palaces to contain. This is Shakespeare's brutal revelation, that sometimes we must be broken to understand. Sometimes we must lose our sight before we finally begin to see. 4. A foolish old man. Along the edge of the world, a blind man walks toward the sea. His steps are slow, hesitant, but the hand guiding him is firm and gentle. It's a filthy beggar with madness on his lips, but something in his voice carries care. Because this isn't just any man. It's Edgar, Gloucester's son, still in hiding, still pretending to be poor Tom, still loving the father who once cast him out. Gloucester, still believing Edgar to be a traitor, has no idea he's being led by the very heart he once misjudged. And though his eyes are gone, Gloucester sees one thing with aching clarity. He no longer wants to live. He asks the beggar to lead him to the cliffs of Dover, to the highest point, to the place where land becomes sky. Not to serve a king, not to fight for justice, but to fall, to end. But Edgar, still loyal, still gentle, takes him instead to a flat field. He describes the towering cliff in vivid detail, then steps away. Gloucester jumps and falls into nothing. He faints. When he wakes, Edgar has changed his voice, claiming the fall was real, that the gods have spared him. "Thy life's a miracle," he says, and something shifts. Gloucester, still blind, still broken, begins to feel something stir, a trace of hope, a thread of faith, the faint shape of love still alive in the world. And elsewhere, the broken king still wanders. Lear has reached Dover, not by plan, but by pain. Stripped of reason, cloaked in sorrow, he mutters to himself about justice, about guilt, about kings put on trial by their own conscience. He speaks to air and birds and invisible judges. But someone is listening. Cordelia, now returned with a French force, not as invader but as daughter, as healer, as truth come home. She finds her father wild-eyed and barefoot, a crown of weeds where once was gold. She kneels. He stares as if seeing a spirit. Then, a murmur, fragile as breath. "I am a very foolish, fond old man. Gone is the thunder, gone is the rage. All that remains is sorrow, and a plea. Pray you now, forget and forgive." And for a moment, the wheel stops turning. Time holds its breath. A father and daughter are reunited, not by power, but by love. Kent is still nearby, quiet, watchful, disguised but unshaken. He serves even as his name is forgotten. He waits for the moment when truth might once again be welcome. But not all hearts are softened. Ambition, that ancient sickness, now spreads like fire. Goneril and Regan, once sisters in strategy, are now rivals in desire. Both have turned their eyes to Edmund, who plays them both, offering secret promises, sending double-folded notes. Regan is widowed. Goneril scorns her husband Albany and begins to plot against him. But Albany is no longer silent. The mutilation of Gloucester has changed him. He speaks, he challenges. And when Edgar, still hidden, sends him a letter exposing Edmund's betrayal, Albany prepares. He will call for a champion. He will answer treachery with steel. The armies clash. Cordelia's French force comes not to conquer, but to restore, to lift Lear, to mend what's been torn. But good intentions do not always triumph. Edmund, now commander, leads the English to victory. Cordelia and Lear are captured. They are led away in chains, father and daughter, bound together once more, but now as prisoners. And yet, in this captivity, Lear finds a strange peace. He does not speak of revenge. He does not speak of rage. He dreams instead of a quiet world. "We two alone will sing like birds in the cage," he tells Cordelia. He imagines a hidden life, a soft, slow ending, with her beside him. Just time, just love, just enough. But in tragedy, dreams are brief. And the world, this broken, raging world, still has one final blow left to give. 5. Howl, 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 howl. In the end, it doesn't take a sword to kill a king. Sometimes all it takes is silence. Lear and Cordelia are taken prisoner. No fanfare, no final speech, just chains. And behind those chains, a quiet order. Cordelia is to die, not by trial, not by verdict, but by the cold efficiency of Edmund's ambition. Power, when built on betrayal, requires blood to hold its shape. But the game is unraveling. Albany steps forward, not a bystander now, but a voice of justice. He confronts Edmund publicly, accusing him of treason, and calls for a challenger to answer him. A knight appears, silent, armored, a blade in hand and truth beneath his helm. They fight. Edmund falls. Only then does the knight speak. It's Edgar. Not poor Tom, not the madman, but the son, returned to honor his father, to redeem the name once defamed. He lays Edmund's crimes bare. The forged letter, the lies, the betrayal of brother and father, and the seduction of not one, but both of Lear's daughters. But the poison has already spread. Regan, seized by jealousy, has been poisoned by Goneril, and Goneril, cornered by guilt and exposure, takes her own life. The sisters who carved a kingdom like meat are devoured by the hunger they fed. In the chaos, Edgar brings news. Gloucester has died. His heart, finally open, finally forgiven, could not bear the weight of love regained. One father, redeemed. The other, still clinging. Edmund, bleeding out, catches a flicker of remorse. "Some good I mean to do," he whispers, and he tries to reverse his final act, to halt Cordelia's execution, but fate, like pride, does not turn back. Then comes the moment, searing, unforgettable. Lear enters, staggering, crushed, carrying Cordelia in his arms. Her body is still, her lips silent. "Howl, howl, howl, howl," he cries, not like a king, not like a soldier, but like a father, like a man, torn open. "Oh, you are men of stones," he tells those around him. "Why should a dog, a horse, a rat have life, and thou no breath at all?" He searches her mouth for air, begging, willing breath back into her lungs. But the silence is absolute, and Lear breaks. The last thread of strength, of madness, of hope, snaps. He dies beside her, not by violence, but by heartbreak. The stage is strewn with loss. Albany, shaken but standing, offers the crown, not to wear himself, but to those who have endured with honor. Kent, loyal to the end, shakes his head. "I have a journey, sir, shortly to go. His service is done. His king is gone. Only Edgar remains, the son who walked through madness, the brother who bore witness, the man who watched power collapse under its own cruelty. He stands among the ashes and speaks the line that ends the tale. The weight of this sad time we must obey. Speak what we feel, not what we ought to say." And so ends King Lear, not in triumph, but in understanding. A tale of love misjudged, power misunderstood, and wisdom that came too late. It leaves behind a kingdom not conquered by enemies, but hollowed by blindness, ego, and silence. A story that asks, with trembling voice, what is the cost of not recognizing what and who was worth holding on to? 6. See better, Lear. What is a king when the crown is gone? What is love when it refuses to flatter? And what is truth when it's punished instead of praised? King Lear is not just Shakespeare's bleakest tragedy. It's his boldest dissection of power, pride, and the terrifying clarity that only comes after everything has fallen apart. Lear begins his journey like many of us do, confident in his role, blind to his flaws, believing that authority guarantees loyalty, that love should arrive clothed in flattery, and that kingship is more than just ceremony. He imagines himself handing down power while keeping its pleasures. He asks, "Which of you shall we say doth love us most?" As if affection could be auctioned, as if devotion lived in declarations. But when truth arrives in the quiet voice of Cordelia, simple, unvarnished, and honest, he cannot see it. Nothing will come of nothing, he warns. And yet in time we learn that everything came from that nothing, from that refusal to pretend. This is the tragedy of Lear, not just the fall of a man, but the dismantling of illusions. Lear is stripped of title, of knights, of sanity, until at last he stands in a field howling at the storm, a king no longer, just an old man raging against forces far greater than himself. And while Lear falls, others fall too. Gloucester, eyes taken, vision granted, he only sees the truth after blindness. Edgar, cast out, pretending to be mad, only to become the sanest voice left. Kent, loyal even in disguise, proof that some hearts remain steadfast even when the world forgets them. And the fool, the only one brave enough to speak the truth before it's too late. Symbols echo like thunder through the text. The storm, not just weather, but Lear's unraveling mind. The blindness, not just physical, but moral, spiritual. Poor Tom, not just disguise, but the essence of the play. When everything else is gone, what remains of a man? And through it all, Shakespeare refuses easy answers. Is there justice? Maybe, but it comes late, and it costs everything. Is madness a form of truth? Perhaps, because only when Lear breaks does he see, only when Gloucester is blind does he know, only when Edgar is cast out does he heal. The world of King Lear is not one of restoration, it is a world of consequence. There is no deus ex machina, no magic return to order, only the raw, ravaged landscape left behind after pride and cruelty have done their work. Lear cradles Cordelia's lifeless body. He searches her lips for breath. But there is none. Not all fathers get to make amends. Not all love, however pure, gets its time. And yet, we leave the stage not just in sorrow, but in recognition. Because King Lear dares to ask, what remains when all masks fall? When the throne is gone, when flattery has fled, when truth has been buried and dug up again? What are we? Just voices in the dark, trying to see, trying to speak what we feel, not what we ought to say. So, see better Lear wasn't just a line. It was the soul of the story, a warning, a blessing, and perhaps an invitation. Thank you for joining this journey through King Lear. If this reflection stirred something in you, share it. Not for us, but for the truths it dares to tell. And remember, Guide to Reads is where literature breathes, where stories aren't just read, they read us back. Subscribe, reflect, and never stop seeking the truth beneath the tale.